Welcome to the Trade Talk Showcase on Brownfield. I'm anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us is Paul Dykstra, Assistant Director, Supply Chain Management and Analysis with Certified Angus Beef. Good morning.
Good morning, Megan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us today. 2020 has been a year that will not likely be forgotten anytime soon. As you take a look back at this year, let's talk a little bit about beef demand, high quality beef demand, and how that all fared in 2020.
Yeah, it's been an unprecedented year, of course, particularly as it relates to food. And we understand that the beginning phases of the COVID-19 issues we faced as a country really had an impact on consumer behavior, right? We had a lot of fear collectively about certain items that would possibly not be available. And that went all the way to the meat case and beef. First of all, the nice part about that is it helped us to see that while the scenario was very negative, the reaction of consumers was very positive in the fact that they wanted beef. And they went to the meat case seeking out beef to fill their freezers in that time of concern. Now, unfortunately, there was a brief period of concern because what they were faced with was grocery store shelves that didn't have any supply. And that was due to packing plant slowdowns and temporary shutdowns as their workforces were either ill or needing to get rearranged to come back to an environment that was safe to work in. So with that, of course, prices spiked to all-time highs for beef. And at the same time for cattle, since we couldn't process cattle on a schedule that we desired, prices for cattle suffered. So we had a huge divergence, of course, between carcass cutout prices and live cattle prices. I don't think anybody liked that, regardless of the fact that some were profitable through that. Nobody really liked the entire scenario. But we were able to rebound quickly, and fortunately, the packers were able to return their environments to a safe workplace, and we were able to start processing at near full capacity, 99% capacity at much of the time this year during as the pandemic has proceeded. So we'll talk about beef demand through that period. Since folks were not able to eat at restaurants, obviously we saw significant decline in beef sales tonnage at food service. So it was all being picked up at retail, and huge volumes moving through retail sales. And in that, we also saw the quality signals come back through. One might have suggested that, well, during this period, perhaps premium products won't really be the item. It's just going to be a matter of securing food supplies. Well, that's actually not the case. At retail, the Certified Angus Beef brand price spread above choice was as high as it's ever been in midsummer, up to $16 per hundredweight on a carcass cutout basis. Now, when we talk about how that impacts cattlemen, unfortunately, this backlog of fed cattle remained intact through the summer, and we're still dealing with it today with exceptionally heavy carcass weights. But the price signals were muted to the feed yard sector and not so much back to the ranch, but the feed yards weren't able to. First of all, they weren't able to sell cattle on a value-based pricing system or a grid for some of that period. And also when they were able to, the price signals were a bit muted because, let's face it, packers had more cattle available to them than we had processing capacity to move them through the chain. So we know that tends to have a dampening impact on price. However, I think that the end product price signals are there and loud and clear. So as we go into 2021, and we come off of our third best ever year for sales at Certified Angus Beef, I think we ought to be excited. It's hard to imagine right now in our shoes today, but beef demand is exceptional. And as we get the carcass weights in line with where we expect them to normally be, and even as we see the cow herd shrink a little bit here at the beginning of the year, I think we'll see that in the USDA reports. The outlook for beef cattle is pretty doggone good as soon as we can just get past a little bit more of this carcass weight and supply issue we'll face into the first quarter.
There's also been a demand even for more direct to consumer purchasing. Is that something that uh, beef producers can capitalize on as well, especially knowing certified Angus beef and premium quality and those types of things, and create additional opportunities for producers, knowing that we saw the supply chain bend a little bit this year, and that potentially could be a concern as we see COVID cases spiking again?
Yeah, that's been an interesting trend, hasn't it? And I think it's all the better for our industry because we saw perhaps a little bit of a chink in the armor, right? When our large processors went down temporarily, unfortunately, of course, but it happened, and I think folks looked around and said, hey, maybe we should kind of bolster the smaller processing segment, the local locker, the local butcher idea. And folks ran to that. And although the certified Angus beef brand doesn't participate in that space per se, we have a couple of rather small licensed processors, but by and large, that's not our area. But with that fact aside, it's good to have more firms in the beef packing business, right? And more diversity of regionality of processing and more options for consumers. And many have really kind of raised their hand, if you will, this year and said, hey, I want to secure a quarter of beef or a half of beef to split with my family or whatnot. And so that's driven some business out in the country. And it's also probably sold some cattle at a price that was better than what we could receive on the weekly average. So I think it's very healthy. I don't wish, of course, we don't wish any ill on any business, but more diversity and more options certainly seems to be a theme that's quite popular amongst cattlemen.
Paul, as we wrap things up today, let's just kind of look ahead and what maybe are some of the market signals that cattlemen should take away and look as they're making plans and looking into 2021.
Well, today the market signals look pretty good here in mid to late November for feeder cattle, right? We have a majority of our nation's cows calving in the spring, so we've got weaned calves and backgrounded calves moving at this time of the year, and it's big volume. Oftentimes the only real payday outside of merchandising some cool cows for the year. So the market's responded pretty well to what was a tough October. We're kind of recovering and building slowly on the live cattle prices, which then build feeder calf value. So that's looking good. And today it'd be hard to say that it's bad. However, the opposite side of the coin is we need to watch corn, and corn prices on the uptick pretty well here in real time now. So that's a risk factor to those of us that have feeder cattle for sale. But to the overarching theme is let's not lose sight of the goal. Let's raise calves that are genetically superior. They've got to cover lots of bases, right? But when it comes to the end user and our customer, we need calves that'll grow, that will convert feed well in the feed yard, but then have some carcass traits that can ring the bell when we merchandise those calves to the packer. And that includes not only the certified Angus beef brand, but up into prime, cattle that can yield and do all the things that we need them to be premium. So with all that's going on, let's just keep our foot on the gas and look at, what kind of feeder calf do we want to market to fulfill demand.
Paul, thank you so much for your time today.
It's been my pleasure to join you. Thank you.
I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.